Raise your hand if you have tried diets and workouts touted in weight loss success stories only to frustratingly not get the same results. Yeah, me too when I was losing weight. The untold truth is these stories are misleading because they're incomplete. What's said to you is the tip of the iceberg stuff, so it's no wonder they don't work because you're missing the entire huge chunk that's out of sight. These icebergs of total truth can be shortcuts to your own goals, but first you need to learn how to uncover them. In this video, I'm going to show you how by teaching you the debunk framework of asking questions to go from naive story practitioner to successful story scientist. To drive home why this framework works, we must first ask, why do we all start as naive story practitioners? Here's a clip from Malcolm Gladwell, New York Times bestselling author, admitting to what storytellers do.
Well, I have infamously said, I would rather be interesting than correct.
Given that Gladwell writes non-fiction books on what it takes to succeed, lessons readers will immediately practice, you'd think he'd be more concerned with correctness. It seems unconscionable that he does not. But why? Because every storyteller, regardless of their medium, whether it be books, podcasts, or YouTube videos, understands the relationship between attention and accuracy. Ideally, as accuracy increases, attention would increase. But what happens in reality is that attention increases up to a certain point, after which it rapidly declines to zero. The increasing details before the peak makes the story feel more and more concrete and therefore more and more relatable and actionable. For example, listing the specific foods that were cut out and which specific exercises were done. But then after the peak, the increasing number of details makes the story too complicated, so our attention drops. For example, uncertainty on why some habits worked in week 15 but weren't working in week 1 causes us to lose interest because we no longer see a straightforward A to Z story. So we switch to another video with an all too simple narrative which, while inaccurate, feels straightforward to try. And this is the problem, because we never venture into the area after the peak, we never uncover the icebergs of total truth. So we are forever, frustratingly, trying the things these straightforward but inaccurate success stories say, but never experience the same results for ourselves. But not you anymore. For every story you hear, you're going to ask the 6 questions in the debunk framework. The first part of the framework is finding the kernel of truth inside the success story you just heard. You do this by asking, did people who fail also do this habit? If yes, what caused this person to succeed while others failed? Let's workshop this. Okay, so say you come across this woman who lost 80 pounds in a year with intermittent fasting. First thing you do is take out a sheet of paper because you're going to be writing down the 3 important parts in their story so you can figure out the kernel. 1, why she started the method. So here she says that she was in a restrictive mentality, which was causing her to be in a bad place mentally. Like, if I asked you to run to a shelter a mile away, you'd run at a reasonable pace. But if I set a lion after you, you would run a whole lot faster and your commitment to get to that shelter would be at a whole new level. Similarly, here she was sick and tired of restricting herself to the point that she would do anything not to have to do it. This is a very different place to be at mentally than someone who still, when push comes to shove, would do HIIT and a new diet. The level of commitment between the two is vastly different. Second important part of a story is listing exactly what they did. This woman says she started with 18 hours fasting and 6-hour eating. It took her 2 weeks to adjust to it. Getting hungry in waves is normal, and she used drinking tea or water to tide her over. She fasted 48 to 72 hours every week for 2 months. And you can add your own questions as they occur to you. Like, why did she only do it for 2 months? After losing 30 pounds, she pushed for 1 meal a day. And here 2 questions pop in my mind. What caused her to reduce her eating window even more? And does this mean I need to keep reducing my eating window over time? And third important part is listing anything that is said of how maintenance is going. There isn't really anything about her maintenance here, and which brings a lot of questions in my mind, like, is she still doing 1 meal a day? If she's still doing it, does she plan to do it forever? If she stopped doing it, how's the scale back going? Now, most people at this point will think, wow, intermittent fasting works. Let me research how to do it. But not you. You will ask the kernel question. Intermittent fasting looks promising. I wonder if others have tried it and failed. And lo and behold, a quick search reveals a whole bunch of studies, videos, and articles detailing how intermittent fasting doesn't work. Let's look at this one from Diet Doctor. It is an article responding to a study that showed intermittent fasting didn't cause weight loss. Clearly, from the previous woman's experience, you know that's not true. But so why the different conclusions? This Diet Doctor article explains that the study didn't put their participants into a calorie deficit despite intermittent fasting. So this goes into the column of why intermittent fasting may not work. And it also answers the question I had earlier on what caused the woman to reduce her eating window even more. It's because she likely stopped losing weight due to not being in a calorie deficit. So shortening her eating window made her eat less, get into a calorie deficit, and therefore lose weight. And you keep doing this until you aren't learning anything new. So at the end, you have a far more complete understanding of intermittent fasting and can make a more informed decision. Do you see how you are saving yourself months of time and effort by doing this 1-hour exercise? And if you're looking for a coach to guide you through this, check out the free sneak peek into my Badass Body Boss program in the description and comments below. Okay, after the kernel question, the next question to ask is the notable question of how much of a reward for my effort does this method really provide me? For methods like intermittent fasting, this is subjective. Some people think the reward is high because they prefer the black and white approach of intermittent fasting, while for others the reward is low because it means not participating in social things. And for other methods, the answer can be objective. Many popular metabolism boosting tips seem to be especially prone for being low reward for effort. For example, here's a Healthline article where the number 2 tip is to drink cold water. It says drinking 17 ounces of water increases resting metabolism by 10 to 30% for an hour. This sounds impressive. So let's click on one of the studies cited here. It says that the increase in metabolism could add up to 1.2 kilograms or 2.6 pounds of weight loss in a year. Not so impressive, huh? So here's the trigger to ask the notable question. Whenever someone says doing something will increase a benefit by X%, you should immediately ask X% from what? Because a 10% increase from 100 units of something is 10 units, which is notable, versus 10% increase on 10 units of something is only 1 more, not so notable. The next question in the debunk framework is the undertaking question. What is the undertaking or process that the method went through? A weight loss process has 5 parts. First is the input, which is the actions you undertake. For example, eating only 6 hours in a day. Then comes the second part, which is your physiology, like hunger, cravings, sleep, energy, etc. Note that 2 people can try the same method like intermittent fasting and experience vastly different levels of hunger, craving, sleep, energy, etc. because their physiology is different. The third part is your psychology. For example, one person may react to not eating out with friends as being awkward and feeling disconnected, while another person may not care. And all 3 of these parts influence the fourth part of the process, which is the output, that is the physical changes you see. And the last part is how these 4 parts change over time, because the effects of any action compound. For example, majority of people don't feel super hungry or restricted in the first week of a diet or workout, but 15 weeks in, that's a different story. Unfortunately, success stories tend to tell us most about actions and the physical result, but typically give little to no insight into the physiology, psychology, and time parts, which are crucial in understanding how to implement the strategy successfully. But now that you're aware of these missing parts, you can intentionally go after uncovering them. Do searches like what makes intermittent fasting difficult, and do the kernel exercise from before on failure stories, because the reason most weight loss methods fail is because something went awry in the physiological and psychological parts over time, while successful stories gloss over these parts to keep their message simple. Alright, next part of the debunk framework is to detect befuddlement in the story, as in, are they confusing the consequence of a success with the cause of a success? A classic example is intuitive eating. I tried intuitive eating at least 3 times while trying to lose weight and failed each time. Yet right now, I practice intuitive eating. How come? It's because intuitive eating is a fairly advanced strategy that requires you to A, be in tune with your body signals. If you've been overeating for years or decades, it's really hard to tell hunger, craving, and satiety signals apart. B, you need to have a solid grasp of nutrition and habit building. This means knowing what's the right balance between whole foods versus junk and desserts, and no, it's not 100% clean eating all the time, and also setting up your environment to make those choices easier, aka building a habit. And C, you need to have a handle on your relationship with food and yourself. For example, it's one thing to know eating a whole tub of ice cream in one sitting is okay once in a while, and quite another to actually stop yourself from spiraling into harsh self-talk when you do it. I had to master each of these roadblocks before I could be successful at intuitive eating. And so intuitive eating is a consequence of losing weight for me and not a cause for my weight loss. The second to last question in the debunk framework is the erasure question. What are all the things this person did before this last method and is being erased from the narrative? Going back to my intuitive eating example, you can see that there are a lot of things to master before the very last method, intuitive eating, can be successful. Similarly, for every method you fail at, it still teaches you about yourself and therefore contributes to your success with the most recent method. Going back to the example of the woman who lost 80 pounds with intermittent fasting, she had tried HIIT, calorie counting, and diets before, all of which taught her that she doesn't have the time to do it as a mom of 2 kids. She brought that knowledge into her practice of intermittent fasting by having a strict not to-do list That is not to do anything but intermittent fasting, which is just as helpful as a to-do list because it prevents you from burning out from doing too many things. And also knowing that she absolutely wanted to avoid those previous methods made her commitment deep to intermittent fasting. As you can see, every success is a series of dominoes knocked down. If you focus on only the last domino that got knocked down, you're missing what triggered the whole success chain, and thus it won't work for you. Now that you have compiled your answers to the 5 previous questions, you have all the information you need to answer the final question in the debunk framework, the desire question. Can I do this forever? Is this the lifestyle I want? So like the woman who lost 80 pounds on intermittent fasting, will you be eating 1 meal a day forever? If not, then you should probably not do the kind of intermittent fasting she did. And if a voice inside you says, I know I can't do this forever, but I just want to do it anyway so I can take a peek at what it would be like at my goal, then pause and realize that you're coming from a place of desperation. The problem with desperation is it drives you to do unsustainable, extreme things to get to that sneak peek, but unsustainable things means your chance at failing is really high. And when you fail, you lose confidence in yourself, which makes you more desperate, and this cycle gets worse and worse at every turn. Combine this desperate cycle with being a naive story practitioner, and it's no wonder that your dream body and life feels out of your grasp. You keep picking the wrong methods because of incomplete information, failing, getting more and more desperate, trying more and more of the wrong things, and the cycle worsens. All the while that dream life feels like it is moving farther and farther away. The good news is you can bring your dream life back within your grasp using the debunk framework. Both my co-coach Lucy and I spent 10 years and $45,000 combined before we started practicing the debunk framework to identify exactly what would work for each of us. You can too. Or if you want me and Lucy to guide you step by step through your personal roadmap, then check out the sneak peek into my Badass Body Boss program in the description and comments below. And if you want to learn more about what I, Richa, personally learned while spending $17,000 on weight loss programs, check out this video. And always remember, you can do it.